do something very nice and very general for everybody, consider that a public service. Good? Okay. And for that reason, a lot of people don't need to monetize their podcast. They don't make that their number one requirement. They want to help others, encourage others, have positive stories, which I love. Those are a lot of the podcasts I listen to. But it may be much more difficult statistically for those podcasts to make a nice profit. So maybe they can offset the costs of their podcast, but can they make it actually profitable?
Welcome to Launch It, the Podcast Maestro, your gateway to becoming a thought leader in your field. Dive into the world of elite podcasting and master the art of influence and inspiration. And now, podcast personality, award-winning author and actress, Anne Scottlin.
Welcome back to Launch It, the Podcast Maestro. I am Anne Scottlin, Podcast Maestro, hanging out with you today and sharing with you some of the tricks and tips of the trade that you will need to know for your own podcast. When you have a world-class podcast, it can really help make you a thought leader in your field. But did you know that 70% of podcasts don't make any money? Zip, zero, zilch. Well, today I'm going to show you how that profitable 30% do it. And these are questions you all ask me all the time. So I think this is going to be a very popular episode. So let's find out how podcasts turn their passion into profit. So stick around and find out. But first, please like, subscribe, share this link with someone. I appreciate it. That helps me. And hopefully this content is going to help you. I think it will. Today, our topic is unlocking podcast profits, turning your passion into cash flow. Why is those words always so delicious? Cash flow. Well, last week we talked about understanding your audience a little bit, and we talked about consistency in your programming and how that really gives you power within your niche, and having an audience that is coming in for a very consistent message. And this is going to play a huge role in what I'm talking about today in how to monetize. Because understanding your audience is really that first key. If you want to attract advertisers, have a target audience demographic and your preferences nailed down. 60% listeners are likely to engage you as the podcaster when you have a niche, when they are people who are highly likely to listen to your content already. So podcasts with a well-defined audience are also 50% more likely to attract advertisers. Hello. So for all of you out there who are like, well, I want to just do something nice for people, something very general. I hear that constantly. And while some people are the most well-meaning, here's what I say. If you do something very nice and very general for everybody, consider that a public service. Good? Okay. And for that reason, a lot of people don't need to monetize their podcast. They don't make that their number one requirement. They want to help others, encourage others, have positive stories, which I love. Those are a lot of the podcasts I listen to. But it may be much more difficult statistically for those podcasts to make a nice profit. So maybe they can offset the costs of their podcast, but can they make it actually profitable? That is the other question. So when your audience is clearly defined, advertisers can recognize that. You can present to your advertisers a proposal that will just demonstrate who your audience is, how highly the engagement is, which I said was 60% higher when you're talking to your niche. Here's a good example. The minimalist. What is the deal? The minimalists. I told myself I was going to slow down. Okay. That popular podcast, The Minimalists, with Joshua Fields, Milbourne, TK Coleman, Ryan Nicodemus. They focus on a very specific niche, people who want to live a minimalist lifestyle, people who want to cut back, people who want to help keep the planet green by buying less stuff, people who want to simplify their lives, their activities, their jobs, keep things simpler and calmer for their emotional wellness, their mental wellness. So who are the kind of sponsors that this topic would attract? And at first you think, wait, A minimalist show will have sponsors? That seems a little crazy. Doesn't that kind of counter it? Well, but what if they also are products and services that help you be a minimalist, right? So one of their sponsors is the Grove Collaborative. So that's what eco-friendly household products. You might be familiar with that. They encourage sustainable living, and which is one of the core principles of minimalism. So it totally makes sense. One of their other sponsors is BetterHelp, just what I said a minute ago, basically online therapy and counseling. So mental well-being and aligning with the minimalist approach to holistic health, which are also key elements in minimalism, is the simplifying, working through the noise in your mind and getting things quieter and simpler. So because they have such a specific niche, minimalism, even that is going to attract very specific sponsors. The more specific the sponsor, the more interested the sponsor will be in sponsoring you and advertising on your platform, because they know they're reaching out to an audience that is very likely to respond to their advertising. So what kind of ads do you sell? And where do they go in the podcast? And we're going to have another whole episode about podcast outlines and how to have, well, I'm going to actually tell you at the end of this show, if you want to hear what 3 things you need to make a podcast successful, if nothing else, they're going to be at the end of the show. So it's different kinds of ads go in different places. As you already know, there's pre-roll, there's mid-roll, there's post-roll. And so it's just what it sounds like. Roll the tape. So pre-roll means right before you even start the substance of your show, you have an ad or a sponsor. Mid-roll, right in the middle when you take that halftime break. Post-roll at the very end. And different positions of advertising serve different needs, different audiences, and advertisers already know for the most part what they're looking for or what their budget is, which helps to determine that. The ads with the highest engagement rates are mid-roll, which is kind of surprising to me, because you would also think there's a lot of podcasts where, the average listening time is 2 minutes. And you're like, well, if people just tune in at the very beginning and then tune out, doesn't that mean that more people saw the ad at the beginning? Well, you'd think so. But actually, that means that a lot of the people who only tune in for 2 minutes are not your loyal followers. They're not your established community. They're people just kind of checking it out, just seeing what's going on. Is this a show I might be interested in? Maybe not today. Maybe I'll have to check in it another 6 times, and then I'll become a fan. It's the ones that actually stayed to the midpoint that are the ones that are going to spend money on something that supports the principles of your show, which obviously supports their principles because they're watching your show, and which is a product or service that they actually need. So these are just little tips that are fabulous to know as you're positioning yourself and looking for advertisers. Well, how do you find and approach potential sponsors? People ask me this all the time, because it's like, okay, make money. Okay, I'll get advertisers or sponsors. Okay, cool. How does that happen? Where do they come from? Do I have to have an agent? Oh my gosh, this could be like a whole thing. Well, there are lots of great tools for you. One would be to use a platform like Podcorn. So that literally connects you with advertisers. You input all of your podcast information, and they help line you up with advertisers that fit your niche. So 54% of podcast listeners are more likely to consider brands that are advertised on their favorite shows. What's the keyword in there? On their favorite shows. Again, when your niche is secure, advertisers are really going to want to talk to you. And the more specific, the better. Because you're like, well, what if it's just what if there are only 1,000 people buying that advertiser's product? Well, that's 1,000 people. That's 1,000 people introducing it to their families and friends. But if those are the people that they're super, super specific, and this is a super, super specific product that doesn't appeal to the broad masses, you've done them a favor and they're doing you a favor. So how do you bill? How much do you charge? How much can you get paid for advertising? And it's all based on CPM, which is cost per milla. Milla what? Millipede, milla. Yeah, it's the Latin CPM, cost per milla, meaning cost per thousand, meaning advertisers are paying for 1,000 impressions or downloads of their ad. So people who view their ad or download the podcast with your ad in it, and they are paying per download or view, usually based on your view rate averages already. So if your podcast has a CPM rate of $25, this means the advertiser is going to pay you $25 for every 1,000 downloads of an episode where their ad is featured. So the average CPM rate across the board for podcasts ranges from $18 to probably about $50. So the secret to the monetization is actually getting the number of impressions and downloads, meaning the number of loyal viewers and followers, people who are in your niche. So it's the people who are actually watching your show is based on how you get paid. You don't get paid hopefully people will watch this show and buy my product. No, you have to demonstrate that people watch your show, and that advertiser is interested in helping you. And here's an example of a successful sponsorship deal. I mentioned Guy Raz last time, but I will again on how I built this, right? So his partnership with ZipRecruiter, which is matching candidates for your business job openings, is a great fit because he's talking about how entrepreneurs became tremendously successful and how they did it step by step. That means a growing business. That means a growing team. And that means you have openings in your business. So for up and coming and mid to teenage entrepreneurships and businesses, this is a perfect fit because basically everyone who's a loyal follower at some point has to hire people. So ZipRecruiter is a really, really great match. So one of the questions people often have is, okay, this sounds really good. I don't know why my nose is itching today. I think it's my allergies, so pardon me for being obnoxious. People will also be, okay, that's great. That's great. So I don't have thousands of views or downloads yet. So how am I supposed to monetize? And there's so many different ways to monetize. I'm not even going to be able to cover them all here because it can be for so many different reasons. And before I go to our commercial break, I'm just going to give you a couple more opportunities to think about ways to monetize. So it's not always in advertisers and specific dollar figures. It can also be based on how your brand overall is growing and becoming successful. And this depends very much on whether your podcast is an interest, a sideshow to your main business or to your main career. Is this a public service? Is this something that you're using to sell your book? Because even if you have a small niche, but those people have discovered your podcast, and even 5% of them were to buy your book or look at your book ads, then that is a huge win. So just having a podcast can drive book sales. It can also help you if you're a speaker. It gives you legitimacy. It gives you a platform, right? So there's so many other ways that you can monetize, but it's a little less overt, sometimes a little more difficult to quantify, but still good. So when I come back, I'm going to give you, though, some midpoint ways for monetizing. So what can you do if you're not just trying to sell your book, and that's why you have a podcast, but you're also not to that point where you're attracting, Nike and the big advertisers. What can you do if you're new or starting out to get funding and to raise money to get paid? So when I come back, we will talk more about this, and I'm going to use this opportunity for this commercial to show you how you can also promote your own services and your own products in your own show. So you can sometimes alternate other sponsors with sponsoring your own products and services so people know where to find you, how to find you, and exactly what it is you do. Or this would be where you would put your book. This would be where you would put an upcoming appearance that you're going to have, etc. So check it out. This is our first commercial break, and I'll be right back.
Picture this. You have worked your whole life to become an expert, a leader, a change maker, but you're so busy, most people will never discover you to recognize your work. Anne Scottlin, founder of Podcast Maestro, understands this challenge. With a decade of Hollywood experience and a proven track record as a business coach, Anne turns seasoned professionals into thought leaders through the art of podcasting. Podcast Maestro offers plug-and-play services, handling everything from pre-production to distribution, so you can focus on your message while Anne and her team manage the rest. Leverage Anne's Hollywood production knowledge, strategic business insight, and social media expertise to amplify your reach and impact. If you're ready to elevate your voice, connect with Anne Scottlin at Podcast Maestro and begin your podcast journey today.
All right, welcome back to Launch It. Yes, how to launch your podcast. I'm the Podcast Maestro, Anne Scottlin, and we're talking about monetization today, which is answering questions you all have about how do I get paid through my podcast, or how do I financially benefit might be another way to say it. As I just mentioned right before the break, sometimes it just means some people will have a podcast, or your publicist will encourage you to have a podcast, or your agent or manager if you have a book, to help promote the book. And driving book sales is the purpose of your project. This goes all the way back to having a mission, a purpose, a very structured business plan to having your podcast, whether it's a public service and you don't need to make any money, or whether you are strictly having a podcast to monetize. This is how you're going to find different opportunities to do that. So what if you are just starting out and you're like, okay, so I have a really unique topic. Again, notice niche. It can't just be like, it's going to be nice and it's going to help people. That is amazing. And if your intention is to have a public service, amazing. But if you want to monetize, you need a niche. So what kind of niche could that be? Something very specific. Well, let's say you look out there at all the podcasts and you see other services that are similar to yours. How are they similar? How are they different? And how can you be unique and different again? Because that's how you can get sponsors, or if you might call it mildly, investors. So sponsors like Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee are really great examples of how you can write on your social media page, right there on your wherever you're streaming, audio or video. That is where you can put that little icon, that's Patreon icon or Buy Me a Coffee icon. And you can also, and off people buy me a coffee, donate $1 for enjoying this episode if you got value from this, right? Then you can also have bonus episodes that you offer people who donate, like question and answer sessions, or group learning, or bringing in a special guest that not everybody else gets to see or hear. And another statistic that's really helpful is 30% of Patreon users are willing to pay for exclusive content. So that's something that's really useful to know. And crowdfunding, a little different again, right? Patreon is, or Buy Me a Coffee is, thank you, I got value, I would like to sponsor you. I think you're doing a great thing. I think you're supplying a great need. You're covering my niche. This is great. If you're getting started, you might want to consider crowdfunding, like, of course, Kickstarter or GoFundMe, because those are ways to get some cash in advance, or even in an ongoing way if you're continuing to build out your podcast to serve different kinds of people, or to offer more detailed services, or to bring in bigger name guests, right? So Dallas Taylor raised significant funds through Kickstarter in his campaign for his podcast 20,000 Hertz, which is a great example of a specific niche, by the way, which is the common sounds we hear all around us in the world and in music and in movies and everything else, sounds that are unique to our life. Where did they come from and why are they interesting? And I mean, how specific is that? So he got funds through Kickstarter because creating awareness around the senses, right? Creating value and information around something that's rarely talked about, like finding that position, that niche that really stood out and made a difference. So again, one more thing, merchandise and affiliate marketing. There are so many ways you can do this. And what I'm going to do here is explore how you can sell branded merchandise, engage in affiliate marketing, how you can boost revenues in more than one way. So when you create a podcast that your audience already loves, it becomes much easier to promote those relevant products and earn commission. So you can sell branded merchandise, right? The most basic t-shirts, mugs, stickers, right? And how do you do that? What kind of platforms can you use to make that an easy step? Well, there's Teespring, and that's T-E-E, like the t-shirt, right? Easy to remember, Teespring, Shopify, of course. And we know that 10% of podcast listeners buy merchandise from their favorite shows. So as long as you become someone's favorite show, 10% of those regular viewers or listeners are likely to buy some of your merch. So this is a really great thing to do. And you can also post it again on your socials as well, and have various opportunities for people to get involved if they love what you're doing. What is affiliate marketing? Again, this is such a high level today. Like, I just want to hang out and have fun and tell you stories. And that's probably what I should do. But I kind of want to get through this because this is such a high level of what is involved and what is available to you in monetizing your podcast. And if I don't at least hit the top points, you won't know what else there is to dig into, right? So affiliate marketing. So earning commissions by promoting your products or services. You've got Amazon Associates. You've got Share a Sale. So you can earn commissions by just promoting verbally. You know this from radio. You know this from other podcasts that you watch or listen to, right? So you yourself say, be sure to check out, I've been using this product or service. This made a huge difference, a huge impact for me. I love my microphone and you guys should check it out too. It's amazing. You know, every show I will talk about my brand of microphone and how that can help podcasters everywhere. So check it out. It's a really good value for the best possible sound and control, blah, 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 right? So you just have those spots where you regularly are spotting those products or services and you're paid to do that. And I won't go into the super detailed rate of that, but these are people that would be your affiliates. This is why we're calling it affiliate marketing, because it's not an advertiser who's putting up a big ad in the middle, a commercially produced advertisement. This is people who are affiliates or supporters. Even public services can have affiliates. So if you're doing a feel-good show that's for kind of the greater masses, this is another place where you might be able to do basically affiliate marketing as a sponsorship for your nonprofit show or your social entrepreneur show, by, just saying, hey, this is brought to you by, that's affiliate marketing. Or if you love this show, you're also going to love, this person's book that's on similar topics. There's just so many ways to create those relationships. And as always, it's relationships, right? And okay, so I'm going to jump in briefly here before we wrap up to just a couple last things. Again, super high level view, sorry. High views are even better. Okay, premium content, membership programs. All right, so this is where people pay to get content that not everybody gets. Usually you have to be up and running for a while, but you've seen these. You can become a VIP of that podcast. You can go to specific events or one-on-ones or Q&As. And people who pay to be a member, like a paying supporter of your program, have special perks. And they have to be getting something to pitch in. And that's kind of a nice way to build a loyal subscriber base, is by encouraging them to get involved, to pitch in, and then get something very substantial in time or services or products for their investment. Well, how can you do that? How can you manage, membership programs or VIP premium content? Well, you can use platforms like Glow, platforms like Supercast to just manage that. Again, there's so many tools for you to use. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's not preventatively hard. You just have to know where to look and what the tools are. And podcast offering premium content, people that only get certain things, they usually see about 25% increase in revenue. So if you have a private group of people who are supporting you and get perks with you, with your products, with your services, then, if they get, every time if say you're putting out a book once a year, they always get a first edition signed copy. If they're get to meet you in a group setting on a virtual call and ask you questions and virtually meet you, these are ways that really get people excited if they love what you're doing. Another example is Slate Plus, which is a membership program, and it can increase your listener loyalty and revenue significantly. So when you create a membership program, you'll find how that can boost your numbers specifically, just like Slate Plus did. And lastly, even leveraging live events and speaking engagements, which I said earlier, if you're a speaker, you might be using your podcast to make more bookings for speaking. And that's a great way to do it. So if you want to jump in and say, hey, the real way I'm monetizing this podcast is by being a world-class podcaster and now being seen specifically as a thought leader in my field, I'm more likely to book specific engagements. And when you apply to those engagements, you mention your podcast, you mention your viewership, you mention your sponsors. So again, that is another way of monetizing. Now, it's kind of outside the podcast itself, but it is still ways to monetize. And again, I have not even mentioned all the ways you can monetize. Other ways you can do live events virtually. Of course, you can have streaming shows, which a lot of us do, live shows. You can have live podcasts with listeners who can drop in, who can jump on the show. You can participate in conferences and speaking engagements that you find speakers to come on your show as guests and vice versa. So whenever you can participate in a live event, whenever you can get people to attend your live event and especially somehow be involved with that, 70% of podcasters say that they get more visibility and revenue after participating in live events, whether you're a guest on someone else's event or whether you're hosting a live event and people are there to check it out, especially if you have a famous guest or any number of other things. All right, this show has gone so fast. And this was such an intense, concentrated overview of monetization. Obviously, if you want to know the nitty gritty and the really fun parts of putting all this together, you can hop on one of my workshops or do a one-on-one with me. So there's so much more. And I'll be talking about more on ongoing podcasts here as well, just so you'll always be able to pick up new ideas and tricks and tips. I don't know how many platforms I mentioned already today, but if you start looking those up, you're going to have so much information on how you can start monetizing without feeling like you need outrageously expensive ways to do that, or that you have to be so big to attract the big players in advertising. So I encourage you to experiment with whatever methods you find work best, and let me know what is working for you. How are you monetizing your podcast? And what questions do you have? I would absolutely love to know. So we're going to take a break from monetizing discussion next time because we're in the middle of our 10-part series, which I didn't even mention at the beginning, which is the Podcast Power Playbook. And this is episode 4 out of 10 in the Podcast Power Playbook. And our topic for next time, I think you're going to enjoy quite a bit, actually, because it helps you develop the outline for every podcast so that you have a winning formula. In fact, I might even call it that. But it's basically, my rough draft title is Podcast Perfection, Crafting the Ultimate Hook, Line, and Sinker. So you're going to want to know, what is that formula? How can I do it? And how can I keep people always coming back for more? I probably should have divided this episode into 6 episodes. Maybe we'll do that down the line. Or again, you can jump into my workshop and get all of this. Thank you so much for being here today. As always, it's such a delight to have you here, to get your comments, to see my new subscribers coming in. And please do subscribe, send me a comment. Shoot me a personal email if you like, and also share this link with someone else who either is a podcaster or maybe someone who has always wanted to start a podcast. And come back again next time. We always stream on Wednesdays, 9 a.m. Pacific. That's 12 noon Eastern, 5 p.m. GMT. Thank you so much for joining me here on Launch It, the Podcast Maestro, in this special edition, the Podcast Power Playbook. I can't wait to see you next time. And in the meantime, I will be watching for your comments and responding. All right, cheers. See you next time.